Hi and welcome to Summoner, and let's first start off with a bit of backstory.
I am Joseph of Suran, Joseph of Mossad, farmer, cutter, plowman, Sahugani, summoner. 9 years ago I destroyed the village of Suran with a power I could neither control nor understand. A power passed down through generations for thousands upon thousands of years. A power I never asked for and never wanted. 9 years ago, raiders attacked Suran. To save my village, I unleashed the demon, and the demon massacred all in its path. The raiders, my friends, my family. The survivors blamed me, and who else were they to blame? I wore the ring. I called forth the demon. And so I left the ruins of Suran in exile and outcast. But I was not alone. My companion was a vagabond named Yago, an old beggar who had come to Suran the year before looking for the child born with the mark of the summoner. Looking for me. Yago said he'd teach me how to use my gift, how to use the ring that only those born with the mark could use. And now we were both vagabonds, hated and feared. We came to the village of Mossad, and I threw the ring down a well. I told Yago to go away and never trouble me again with talk of prophecies and destinies. I was finished with my power. I swore on the graves of all who perished in Suran that I would never summon again. But the one thing I tried to escape was the one thing that came looking for me. And that is where my story begins.
The year was 596 Vorno Mediva. 300 years after the Medivan conquest, 1,000 years after the fall of Ikemos, and 12,000 years after the Third Arenegeth and the death of Urath, god of the Sudani. Mossad the Usurper, Emperor of Orenia, a realm far to the north across the sea, invaded the shores of the Kingdom of Mediva. Led by the infamous Four Riders, Murad's soldiers laid waste to the villages along the Dahu River. One night, they came to Mossad. The soldiers were looking for a boy with a mark on his hand. The mark of the Summoner.
Okay, first things first, I am going to be talking over the other cutscenes. I just felt that if you weren't sure about what this game's about, you needed to hear that one, just to clarify the whole backstory. And I must say, you know, a lot of fantasy stories start off with one destroyed village. This one starts off with two. And if you've played this game, you'll know that that actually fits the tone of this game quite well. Because honestly, the story gets a bit grim near the end and throughout, just in general. Well, to talk about this game, it's published by THQ, which I understand is going through it's more than its fair share of problems right now, and it was developed by Violition. And Violition, they've also developed the Red Faction games and the Saints Row games. So, you know, at least they've had success after this game. Speaking of which, this game, it's an obscure, lesser-known RPG series. You could say. Well, there are two games, so I guess that technically makes it a series. But it's fairly obscure. It's a game I remember playing when I was younger, and I like it. I've got some really nostalgia feels for it. Now, granted, when I played it again, some of the flaws of the game re-emerged. I mean, I still like it a lot. I can just see the problems a bit more clearly nowadays. But anyway, you can see here you have an inventory selection screen, and you can just equip items to various slots, and you get some for jewellery, some for weapons, some for armour of course. Pretty standard RPG stuff. If you played this sort of game, you'll probably already know about this sort of things. And first up we talk to Isaac here, and we get the side quest Isaac's Sword. A pretty simple fetch quest really. You pick up his sword here and you deliver it to his nephew in the city we're going to be heading to. So I actually like this little side quest because it's simple and it acts as a tutorial. And when it comes to getting things across to the player, I think it's better if the player learns by doing. You know, don't give them a wall of text, give them a small task which is simple to complete. And you can see here all items end up in the inventory, as they should. Isaac's Sword, unfortunately we can't really use it, but all quest items show up in the MISC section of your inventory, and also on a quest journal, which is a fairly useful feature. Quests show up there, and once you've completed them they disappear off that journal. It's pretty useful for keeping track of all the side quests, and this game does actually have a lot of side quests, particularly in the beginning. But you know, that's what I like about RPGs, or at least this kind of RPG, is the side quests, because they build upon the world. I like the idea of doing stuff you don't have to do. For example, a side quest might involve a character or an item which is related to the main story but isn't key, and it just, you know, it adds background, it adds backstory, it adds flavour text. I guess that's the word I'm looking for, flavour text to an experience, and it just makes the world feel a little more 3D. So anyway, start off the bat fighting these Iranian soldiers who are sort of based off Far Eastern people. You know, there's a bit of Chinese, there's a bit of Japanese in there. I don't want to use the word Orientals because I think that's offensive. And maybe maybe the PC brigade have gotten to me, but I think Oriental isn't the PC term. It's Asian or Asian American if they're American, I suppose. But anyway, you can see there they're based off samurais, and we'll be seeing a lot more of those armies as we get on. And just to recap the story, my word, Joseph has just gotten a whole string of bad luck. His first village is attacked by raiders, he summons a demon, but then that demon ends up killing everyone, and now this village is destroyed by Emperor Mossad, who's after the summoner. Yeah, there's something which is explained a bit more in the story as we get on, is that the leader of the Iranians, Murad, wants to actually destroy Joseph himself, because a prophecy has said that a summoner will end his rule. And I do like Emperor Mossad. Well, that's a character we'll see probably not until quite late in the game actually, but he's the typical mad emperor. You'll see the sort of mad stuff he does when we visit his kingdom, or empire I should say. Now the way I'll handle these battles is I'll show you how I defeat an enemy the first time, and then I'll crossfade if I fight the same enemy. Because that was an aspect which put me off recording an RPG, the fact that these levels can go on for like an hour at a time, or at least an hour and a half at least. But I'll look like this, you don't need to see me attack the same enemies again and again, so I'll use crossfading editing to just jump over that hurdle. Now what you just saw there, the yellow glowing holy move, is heal, and Joseph can heal, which is very useful. In fact, you'll probably use healing spells more than potions. That's just because your AP, you know, your magicness, actually slowly regenerates over time. So when you play this game, you'll probably be a lot more likely you have magic to do heal rather than a healing spell. Now, to talk about Joseph, well, for a start, he does know healing spells. He also knows fire spells, or he'll gather them later on, and he's also a bit of a melee fighter, so you know, typical main character, a jack of all trades. But I would say not necessarily a master of all, because later on in the game you'll find a character who's better at fighting than Joseph, and we'll also have another character who's a better magic user than Joseph. But then again, a jack of all trades can be quite useful. It makes him versatile. And of course, being called a summoner, he does have that summon ability, which again we won't get until a bit further on in the game. You can see here we have these skills which level up, like leveling up heal, grants us more healing spells. And I would advise you, that's one of the key skills you want to level up. It's very important you level up heal, because you'll get spells like revive and resurrect. Now you can get items which bring people back from the dead once they're defeated, but it's just easier to use magic. And you can see now I've leveled up heal, and now I have cure, which will help me get rid of negative statuses. For us, the reeve of the village. I like that detail. It's quite grim, but they went to the trouble of giving the dead bodies names and identities. Anyway, if we go down this sort of grassy route here, we come to this little hut here, where we'll find an item. Not really important, but I guess it's worth getting. And I don't mean that one. Oh, the laughing monk lying on the ground. I guess he's not laughing now. This game's horrible. It's giving me post-traumatic stress of all the death and massacres. But oh no, I'm just. This game is grim, really, and that's the thing. You wouldn't think it was grim. Like for example, a horror game is a lot grimmer. But anyway, when I think about it, it's not that grim. It's just that this game has more massacres than it should have, really. Just one or two more than it really should have, than it really needs. But then again, you know, a bit of darkness doesn't never hurt anyone. And this is set in medieval Europe. You know, one of the darkest ages in history. Well, apart from the Dark Ages, which happened before then, but whatever. Anyway, I defeated that Aurelian scout. I guess he wasn't always prepared. Badontish. Sorry about that, but maybe I'm trying too hard. Maybe you could give me some feedback if you watch this video, but I am trying to inject a bit of humour. I'm trying to not make my commentary so stale. Trying a bit of a life, bit of enthusiasm. Ooh. And most of the time it can be a bit forced, but actually I'm feeling a bit pepper today. I've had my dinner, I've had a drink. I'm full of energy, hooray. I'm a bit manic. But fortunately, we're nearly out of this horrible village. Oh, and you can return here, by the way. But there's nothing for you. You can fight the enemies to level up, but yeah. Oh, look at this save file. I do have one where I spent 39 hours playing this game. And that was my first time, so a lot of it is just me wandering around, not knowing what to do. Anyway, Nath here fills us in. It's pretty much what we already know from the opening cutscene, but you know, it doesn't hurt to get a recap. Especially when you have all these complex elements. You know, it doesn't hurt to hear something a few times just to let it sink in. I would say it's a shame there isn't a lot more voice acting in this game. Like, a lot of it is just text, but well, when I think about that, there's so many NPCs in this game that giving them all voice clips would have been out of the question. Even modern games can't do that now, but I don't know, maybe just give a voice to one or two of the key characters, but oh well, I still like this game anyway. And here we have Conan the Barbarian, who's... Hey, you've had a haircut. Suits you, mate. I love the dialogue in this scene. It's amazing. But anyway, this Barbarian will be a sort of a mini-boss. A few tips here. One, it is worth going around the village and killing all the soldiers to level up. But other than that, all you can do really is attack and heal if you get in trouble. Now, there's also a few healing potions I've collected, and if you really get in trouble, you can pause the game and heal that way. And that way is actually faster, and arguably it's actually a bit broken. can just pause the game and heal and cast spells. But fortunately I managed to complete the game without resorting to that glitch. And that's another thing about this game. From what I gather, it is slightly rushed. And there's a few elements which just seem unpolished, but I'll point them out as we come across them. And here you can see the sort of knockdown effect. And obviously when you see a character knocked down, their defences drop. Like you can see him just literally taking 20 health with each swing. But honestly, that sort of tripping tactic, it is a good method. And I'll use it myself against enemies later on. There you go, Conan. That was for Conan the Destroyer. That movie was terrible. I actually like Conan the Destroyer. I've got a lot of childhood nostalgia for it, actually.
Having eluded the Orenians, Joseph sailed to Lanel, where he hoped to find the old beggar named Iago. In the tongue of the ancient Runari, Lanel means City of Gods. For upon this site, the towers of Iliosi stood. Now Lanel was capital of Mediva, seat of King Belias VI, descendant of the victors of the Medivan conquest.